Hello and welcome. So today we are going to try our best to explain some of the techniques that you can apply in your watercolor painting. And we're actually going through some of the materials that I actually use. And as you can see here, the first one to the left is my painter's tape. I also use washi tape. Both of them, I think the difference between the washi is that it's very cute and colorful. It actually is a tacky tape. It doesn't stick to the paper or rips up the paper. However, you have to be careful because it could happen. And the painter's tape is actually very useful. I use it for bigger paintings and it can hold on a lot of water. So watercolors comes in pans as well as in liquid form. It comes in tubes, and these are actually in tubes, and you see me here showing to the camera how it comes from. These are of different brands. You really don't have to have a specific brand, but it's good to know. Some of them are opaque, some of them are transparent. I actually use both, but I mainly use transparent watercolors, and it's good to know the difference between them too. If you're new to watercolors, I will always suggest you to get yourself a student grade so you can practice all the techniques and everything that you need to know in watercolors, and then graduate to artist or professional materials. Art can be quite expensive, so you always want to use what is convenient to you, specifically when you're starting. I would like to introduce this as an instructional video that will help you to have an idea on how to use different techniques in the medium, which is watercolor. So I use both. I use tubes of watercolors, and I actually use watercolor in pans. Right now I'm using, these are Holbein, Schminke, and I believe that's it. I also use pan watercolors, and the ones that I'm using now is a travel set from Koi Watercolors. I actually have been trying Arteza, and they're pretty cool. This is a traveling set from Koi Watercolors. As you can see, comes in little tiny pans and is very versatile. You can use it for when you're out and about painting. And watercolors comes, of course, like I said, in different ways. These are watercolor pencils, and they're actually very useful. I've used them as well, and I really like the results. So I was actually recording this video on an app called Periscope. So you see me here actually explaining to people that come to my broadcast and watch me paint on how we were going to use the different materials that I actually have been or I took out. So that's why you see that I'm taking my time. I actually recycle everything from pasta sauce bottles to anything that has a cap on, because this is very resourceful. And of course, coffee. The coffee is actually resourceful as well. You can use it for your oils. And of course, I have here water, but you can definitely use it for your oils. But we just want to stick with watercolors, and like I said, you can put a lid on, and you have definitely a travel kit with you if you like that stuff and you like to paint outside. So the way I use the cans for oils is that I actually fill it up with mineral spirits. I put a little bit of that in there, and I put the cap on, and they're great for oils as well as for acrylics. And you can definitely have a mesh underneath, and you have your little container there for your art brushes. So brushes come in different ways. These are acrylics, And these are very inexpensive. I got them from, I think, AC Moore or Michaels, one of those two stores. And what I'm showing here is that I actually sometimes use it to lift paint. And that's something that you can do in watercolors. I haven't, and I'm probably in the next or future video, I'll probably show how to do that. It's very easy and definitely a thing that you might want to do with your watercolors. And I also have my watercolor brushes, my flats. Some of them have been with me for years. These are actually, I believe they're not synthetic, but mostly hair. But they also have they're hold on to water and they're a little bit softer than the actual acrylic brushes or oil brushes that I was showing before. And you can tell by the look of them, they have been truly used and abused. And of course, I have my typical rounds. This one is actually from Jerry's Art Rama, and this is a synthetic brush, but it actually works very well. So if you were to get yourself materials, you can definitely get your synthetics that are more cheaper, and they're actually very good quality as well. I have gotten this pack of Onison brushes, and as you can tell, I haven't used them all. I've been using it with watercolors as well as with acrylics. They seem to hold on. They're actually soft. I don't think they're actually hair. They're probably a mix of synthetic, and they come in different sizes and varieties. And I'm showing them next to the other brushes that I actually had before. This is a whole pack, so they come in different sizes. And you see me showing the hair. It's pretty soft. I definitely recommend if you want to try them out. They're a bit pricey, but like I said, you have to choose what's convenient to you. If you're starting off, I'll recommend you to definitely use something that is so it can actually withstand the abuse. And these are called Onisom. And of course, last but not least, you can get a rag or a piece of paper. I usually use a napkin because that's convenient, and also this is to absorb the paint and also clean up your brushes. And here I am showing you the painter's tape. This is actually painter's tape that you use to paint your home or your houses. These are very versatile. Like I said, I use it for big sheets of watercolor paper. And the one that you see around the paper is actually the tacky tape, the washi tape, and I have it in my hands. And I actually chose it because it come in cute forms, cute shapes, and you can tell that they don't scrape or they will lift up the paper. You have to be careful not to wet too much the paper or add the paper when the paper is actually wet because it will rip off the paper. So just take in consideration that. So when I'm painting, I like to do all kinds of techniques, and this is my favorite, alcohol. I use alcohol to create some texture into the watercolor, especially the backgrounds. So I would recommend you to get a very cheap, this is very cheap, 99-cent store alcohol. This is to splat and to create textures onto the paper, and we're going to use it on the techniques that we're going to be using today, or doing today, better say. We are not going to show every single technique, but some of them can also be scraping. You can use a palette knife or a small a knife, so you can scrape off part of the paint and create a white space. As you can see me here, I did not use it on this demo, but you can definitely use it when you're painting. And if I haven't mentioned, the box of paint is actually from Koi Watercolors, and we're going to start off by doing different techniques and perhaps showing you the different ways. I am actually using and recording from a Samsung 8. I don't have a digital camera or a camera to do my videos. So you're gonna have to forgive me if you are not able to see as well. For now, this is my recording, my recording camera, and it's working so far. Maybe in the future, it's definitely a must have a good camera, but for now, this is what we're going to use. We're going to talk about the paper that I'm using. This is Stretchmore 140 pound cotton. This is possibly machine press. It really doesn't matter. This paper, I use it to practice, and it's a very good paper for you to practice with. This is the first paper that I actually used when I started watercolors, and I feel like it's versatile. You can stretch it, you can do a bunch of things, a lot of techniques with it. So I definitely recommend you guys to get yourself, and you don't have to get a big size sheet like you see here. You can get yourself a 9 by 12 and start doing your small watercolors on that little pad. As you can see here, I was actually talking about stretching your paper. I think it is important. It allows the tooth of the paper to actually soak on more water, and the watercolor becomes much better, and it can hold on a lot of washes. A lot of people don't stretch the paper. I usually stretch my paper depending on the type of painting that I'm going to do. But for practice purposes, we don't really have to stretch our paper. This is just to show you on the things that you can create with watercolors. Usually when I'm painting, the paper is stretched, and this one, like I said, Stretchmer is very versatile, and it's pretty cool to see what it can do, and that's the main thing. So I'm going to use my flat. This is a big brush. This is a pretty thick brush, and it can hold on to water. So the first thing that I would like you to know is, if you are like me, like in the beginning, I had no idea how to really control watercolor, because you really can control watercolor and it's unruly. So the first thing that I actually learned is how much water the brush actually holds. I think this is something that you're not going to find anywhere else. A lot of people don't explain to you, but I would like to show you, because I feel that that's the way that I understood on how much water I can actually pour on my brush. So the first exercise, and this is sort of like techniques at the same time, kind of just teaching how to maneuver watercolors. And I feel like after I did these exercises, I was able to, I don't know, like I kind of understood how my materials work, because you have to, I guess, get acquaintance with both your materials and also painting. So the first thing that I do is that I submerge my brushes in water, and then I throw in the watercolor brush into the paper, and I basically just, I don't know, like measure how much water the brush actually holds. So this is what you see me here. I'm actually dropping off some of the excess, and then I'm going to pick up the brush, or you can do that too, or you're going to pick up the brush, submerge it, and squeeze out all the water. So you have an idea on how much water your brush actually holds. Again, we're going to drop off the brush into the water. I'm sorry that my camera is a little shaky. I tried to also zoom in into what I was doing. So we're going to submerge the brush into water. And I'm like a mess with this thing. I use a phone stand. So submerge the brush into water, and then, okay, all the water that it can hold, and then you squeeze out all the water out of the brush. Again, we're going to use any color, okay? Just slap it in there, kind of just wake it up, and then squeeze it out. So all this is what the water brush holds inside. All right? So all of that is inside that brush. It allows you, and it makes you understand on how much water that brush holds inside. And then we're going to pick up with the same brush, we're going to pick up all that excess of water, So we can tell all the excess or all the water the brush was had inside. Remember that I did this twice. So it's going to be twice. We're going to pick up again all the excess of the water. And we're going to squeeze it out into our little water container. Squeeze it out. This exercise will help you to understand on how much water the brush holds. And you can do this with every single brush. And the I think like the natural the brush is, the more water will hold. So that is this is the perfect example as to to understand on how watercolor works. Also, a good brush will definitely go back into place, but most important is it will allow you to create, and it will allow you to swiftly, when the brush touches the paper, you will see how very soft that brush is. So you always want to look for that. Of course, when you're learning, what you care is to actually get down and jot down the technique that you're using. All right, so now to the fun part. So you see me here that I'm actually wetting that area, slapping a lot of water into it. So we're going to do wet into wet first. And we're not letting it dry. We're going to actually use that wet into wet, and we're going to basically just use about the same part that we did with the beginning, like about the same that we suck up with the water. We're going to just slap it into that paper. Then I call it wake up because the watercolor right now is inactive. It's just that, it's just in a pan. So I wake it up with a little bit of water. I activate it with water. And I'm going to start with a blue color. Okay, as you see here. And we're going to kind of just slap it in there. All right. So before I show you how this is kind of just like a good contrast, you can just think about the things that you can do with this. This is definitely good for a landscape, for to make a sky. You can definitely use this with backgrounds, and you can just have fun because this is a fun way of actually creating. And what I'm doing is that I'm dragging down with water, the watercolor, and it creates that granulated effect in watercolors. So I'm just gonna get a little bit more of a deeper color. You see me here waking it up again. I'm gonna do a second layer, a little bit darker as you can tell. And you see how I'm dragging it down with me. You see how both of them are kind of just marinating into each other. Again, we're going to submerge it in water. And I'm using some complementary colors because I think it looks not only good, but also allows you to see what you can create with this. All right, so I'm just dragging down with me. And I'm kind of just marrying that color into each other. It looks pretty nice, almost like a rainbow type of thing. And you see me creating that beautiful effect. So that's one technique that you can use. Definitely best is when it comes to backgrounds as well as with skies, landscapes, and even plants. Because believe me, I love to create flowers that are like that, have that little kind of just like an infinite mode on them. So this is going to be our first technique. So you see me that I grab onto the alcohol and I'm just spritzing the alcohol into the watercolor, which is semi-wet, and you can see the beautiful droplets of what it does. Kind of just separates the watercolor and it creates a beautiful texture and effect onto the paper. So that's alcohol effect, and this basically two techniques in one, and you can definitely use it. There's a bunch of things that you can do with watercolors. You can throw in like little threads into the watercolor. You can do this with Q-tips. You can do this with cotton swabs. You can do all kinds of stuff. There's masking fluid. I mean, the list goes on and on of the things that you can do. But for now, we're just doing like the simple things that you can create with the medium. So we're going to let this dry. And what I was explaining is we're going to go now to the left side and we're going to do the quite opposite. We're going to start this with the dry paper, okay? And we're going to add the brush and we're going to load it with watercolor. And we're going to slap it into, I was going to say canvas, it's actually paper. I'm going to slap it into our paper. Sometimes when you're recording these things, specifically in Periscope, you have to explain a little bit more. So that's what I had to do. But it's quite simple. What you're going to have to do is that you're going to look for your color. The paper is completely dry and we're going to slap into it, basically a little bit more drier of a brush. And like that, you're basically doing the same thing. You're just watering it down. But the paper, of course, the paper is basically dry. So wet into wet and then dry into wet. These techniques, of course, you have to pick and choose what I guess the theme of your artwork is going to be. But you can definitely, I guess that you can definitely have ideas on how to do this. I chose this because I feel like a lot of people don't like to use dry into wet, and I think that is also a very good idea on how to not control it, but at least to maneuver it through watercolors while you're starting off. I think having the paper dry will allow you to control a little bit more when it comes to the paint itself, and you will be able to understand watercolor better. Of course, as you can see here, because I'm doing this, the watercolor seems to be a little bit more, not only I'm using red, but also the watercolor seems to be, the line of it. You can definitely tell where it started, where it ends. So that's dry into wet. That's what it does, that's what it costs. And it's good that I actually show both because you'll be able to see that and you'll be able to see the difference between wet into wet and dry into wet. And both techniques are actually very useful, and I don't see why some people don't like much to use dry into wet. I actually learned a whole lot by letting my paper dry and applying the wet brush into it. I really, really love that technique, and I would love for you to try it sometime. If you're starting off in watercolors, I think this is the perfect idea, and also it will allow you, like I said, to learn a whole lot with the watercolor. So now I'm actually getting my spritz bottle, which I actually didn't show, but I'm just spritzing. You can really tell, but actually water can cause even a reaction into the paper. And you can see here just that bit of what happened when you're spritzing down watercolor. Definitely you can use this with a spritz bottle. You can also do it with your own hands, and you can definitely do it with a brush. So that's wetting to wet next to it, and then you have drying to wet and also spritzing with water, which creates a really nice texture, a really nice, I guess, really nice effect into the paper. So the example, which is going to be possibly on the left side, and I was very, very, very enthusiastic about it because I was basically just showing a lot of things in this demo. I love to create, and I think that this is, even though it's like the basic of watercolors, I'm not like a savvy or know it all, but these little techniques here will probably sprout your inspiration to create your own concoction in watercolors and start painting. So right now, drying to wet, I'm just splotting basically paint into it. All right. I also learned not to be afraid. Like some people, just don't be afraid. Do your thing. Create what you like. Explore. Watercolors is a beautiful medium. So you see me here that I started drying to wet, and then I'm splatting with the watercolor brush with watercolor paint on it. And that is also an effect, and you can definitely create that into your watercolors. I mean, you can do so many things. I use this in backgrounds, specifically in florals. If you want like something on the background, you can definitely spread some watercolor with your brush, and it creates a beautiful kind of like a almost like magic. I don't know, I can explain it, but it looks pretty neat, pretty cool. You can create flowers with it, you can create backgrounds, you can do all kinds of stuff. Now I am using salt. Salt is also part of a technique that I'm going to be using. It has to be semi-wet. You have to learn how to control that. That's something that actually takes practice. Not everybody. In the beginning, I was a mess, so you have to be patient. You have to be patient. You have to wait the right perfect moment, a couple seconds after I apply the paint, and you're going to let that salt dry. Do not remove the salt while it's drying, because you're going to rip off paper. It's going to be a mess, and you're going to be just salty because your painting is going to be ruined. So what you saw me applying there was salt, and it has to be completely dry. Once it's dry, you're going to very gently scrape it off. This is definitely a must when it comes to landscape. I've seen beautiful landscape created with salt. I think it's a great effect. I love the technique. It's very easy to use once you get the hang of it, and you can definitely use it on your next painting. Last but not least, I'm actually just picking up my piece of paper, and we're going to do something that you can definitely use when you're doing landscapes as well. I believe that I was waiting for the paint to dry because it was still pretty wet on the right side. So we're going to take our piece of napkin and we're going to create some clouds. So again, slapping some paint into it. This is my favorite color, which is blue. I'm slapping a lot of it, and you see me here. You can definitely do that. You can create different clouds with it. And a lot of people like to pick up with their own napkins or tissue. You can create this, you can create your clouds, you can definitely use it for your watercolor backgrounds. I actually use it a lot for landscapes. You can definitely use and pick up your little piece of napkin and create these beautiful clouds. This nice effect is pretty neat. And as you can tell, I wanted to do something simple, something that you can actually learn from. A lot of watercolor is something that you need patience. So I will suggest you to go back, to slowly review it, go back, do your own thing, and take notes, because I think that like this, that's the best way. And definitely, most definitely, you have to practice. If you don't practice, it becomes difficult. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to flip this big piece of sheet of paper, and we're going to incorporate everything that we've learned with something very simple. Something that could allowed you to have an idea on where and how to create these things. And I decided to do almost like a snowy landscape. This is, of course, without reference, without nothing, just to give you an example on things that you can actually create with this. I think it was very cool, and I tried my best to create and to do it with everything that we learned here, just to give you, like I said, an example of the stuff that you can do. And we're actually going to use the tape so it can divide the sky from the background. Specifically, if you don't have like a straight hand, and it's difficult for you to, you can definitely use the tape, which I'm using the painter's tape to create that straight line and separating the background from the foreground. And tape is actually very, very, very useful when it comes to things like that. So right now I'm doing a basically like a sunset, and I started with that red color, and I wish that I could add a little bit more layers of color, a little bit more strong color, so the camera can really pick up these colors. But I hope that you can understand and you can have an idea of what you can do when it comes to this medium. So I'm creating a sky, almost like a sunset type of thing. This is perfect, like I said, for snowy landscapes, for for backgrounds. Most definitely for landscapes, for skies is very cool to create and do all kinds of things with it. And we're going to use the three techniques that we actually learn. We're going to use it on this painting. So you see me here is just slapping some paint so you can see how easy these actually are. So once I have all these colors jot down into my paper, as you can see here, I'm going to drag this with me, right? Which is, we did the middle basically wet into wet, and then we started drying to wet, and now we're basically just dragging down with the water part of that background. We're going to start blotting out with our piece of napkin. And I'm doing this just to create some foliage on the background. See me here with the piece of napkin. Okay, so that's one technique that we just learned. And I'm dividing, like I said, the foreground from the upper part with the piece of tape. Might not be the straightest line, but at least it serves for an example. Then now we're going in with the alcohol, basically just creating almost like a snow droplets in there. And you see me throwing down some alcohol, and I'm doing this in a very lightweight, not too much. Then I'm going to grab my nice salt. I'm using kosher salt just a little bit before I go, and so I can explain this a little bit better. Kosher salt is the best because it's a little thicker. You'll be able to see those little granules of salt into the paper. So I will recommend you to use kosher salt, which is a little thicker. And unfortunately, I didn't lower, and I do apologize for this. I didn't lower the camera so you really can see what I'm doing on the bottom. Now I got it. So I actually did a little bit of the foreground. We're going to start painting, taking out the paint, or the tape, and like you see here, I'm folding the tape in half. So basically tape and the techniques that we use, and we're creating a whole landscaping here. And I'm going in with that line that is like almost crooked, but it doesn't matter because it's our painting and it doesn't matter, we're practicing. And I'm just gonna go around with my brush, picking up a little bit, taking off the tape. And sometimes I reuse it if it's not too wet or it's not too dirty. I reuse the pieces of tape. I reuse everything. I'll try not to waste too much, specifically the paper. And believe me, I've seen beautiful cards just with the techniques that we are showing at the moment. I see them all over, people that have made cards with the techniques only on the card and with some lettering, and it looks very, very beautiful. So don't underestimate these things. Try to use it for your own advantage and try your best to learn all this stuff. It's pretty cool. I love watercolors. I've been using it for years and it's my favorite medium. Even though I paint in oils and I paint in acrylics, I always come back to watercolor. It's something is it just I just feel at home. I feel good when I'm using the medium. So I hope that I give you the same sprout your inspiration and you start using it today. So I went with a almost like a farm type of thing and I'm doing the roof of it. And of course it's snowing, so I'm not going to just be so like careful with it. I'm just doing my best to create something like in the midst of that snowy scene. And I decided to do a red farm. And again, using a piece of cotton or a piece of tissue, I'm just scraping off because there is snow. And then very quick, I added a corner, and to that corner, we're going to start developing some trees. So once I have all of that down and I have enough watercolor in there that I can cover into the background, I'm going to get my green and I'm going to start adding some foliage and basically just doing some trees. Believe that's like a light green with a bit of yellow ochre. And I did it around that farm. And like you can see, I really didn't need no reference photo, no nothing. Kind of just had it in my mind as to what I could create with the techniques. And that's something that you will develop with time, as well as with your learning techniques and stuff that you probably will learn along the way when you're starting picking up in watercolors. Like I said, this is a very simple painting. We're just adding some foliage here and there. I decided that I wanted to do some corners. A lot of people worry about, oh, it's running, don't worry about that stuff when you're practicing. You develop an eye later on. The most important thing is that you practice. I'm doing some windows and a door, of course, which you have to have a door. And I did the corner of it. And I just flicker, like you can tell, flicker with my brush upwards. And I'm developing some tree trunks, which is pretty cool. So since the paper and the paint is basically already wet, I'm just adding a little bit more of a layer with the same brush. And I'm adding a little bit more into the background with the trunks. So you can basically just, it looks like there is some foliage around it. So as you can tell, the painting is almost done. You can see how it looks. And I am very, very happy. Most of it, I hope that you guys learned something and that I did justice to all of this techniques that we learned today. This demo is definitely for people that want to start off in watercolors. I mean, I watch tons of videos and I think that I learn half from videos, half from, my own practice. But I think it's great to actually see someone incorporating these ideas and these techniques into the watercolor painting. Thank you so, so, so much for watching. I'm actually going to turn over the paper and show you guys how the salt actually is drying into the watercolor paper. I was very excited to do this demo, and definitely not only myself but people from Periscope actually enjoy it very much. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Here's a close-up on the salt. Of course, it's still pretty much wet. Like I said, you have to wait until it dries. And most of it, I hope that you guys learned something and that you enjoyed the demo for today. Again, my name is Mary Cruz. You can find me in Twitter and follow me, and also on Instagram. I have a Twitter account for a very long time. I follow a bunch of artists in there, and I would love to make you part of my family. And here in YouTube, I'm basically new, but that's okay. We're just starting off, and I hope that you learn something, of course, from this demo, and that you start enjoying watercolors just like I do. Thank you again, and have a great day.